Hey, it's Truth Be Told. I'm Tony Sweet with Captain Ron, and we have a great show for you guys. And thank you guys for being patient. We're back in action, and 2019 is going to be a great year. But today we're starting it off with an amazing guest. We have Dr. Seth Shostak, and he is a senior astronomer from SETI, and I know he's been on pretty much every program we've ever watched, you know, from Coast to Coast to Ancient Aliens, Discovery Channel to History Channel, and I know he has 3 books, and I think a textbook also, and I'm excited to have him on the show because there's so many questions and so many things that's constantly changing in the astronomy world, and so I'm excited to have him on the show today. So please, let's welcome Dr. Seth Shostak. How you doing?
Well, you've got quite a studio audience.
Oh yeah. They showed up just for you.
All right.
We only had to pay them twice. So, well, we are excited to have you here, and I wanted to start off because this is something that I really saw in the news as of recent.
Recently.
Yeah, the Chime radio waves that we we're hearing in the news over and over and over, and not only that we found that the repeating radio wave, but there's also the signal that it was twice.
Well, it was once in 2012, and then it happened again. Now we had it where it's twice. So
right.
The thing is repeated twice. 2 times ever, I understand that SETI has had a signal repeat twice. Right. Is that right, Doc?
Well, actually, the Chime result was found by the Chime telescope, which is up in the woods of British Columbia in Canada. And that wasn't found by a SETI group, actually, although obviously we're interested in it.
Of course, yes.
But what's interesting about Chime, it's a tortured acronym. I think it stands for Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment, but I'm not sure. But whatever it means. They found this thing last summer, and it's what's called a fast radio burst. So it's a very short burst of radio emission. Sounds like a slide whistle, quickly going down the dial, if you will, in a blink of an eye. And it repeats. That Chime signal repeats. There was another repeating fast radio burst that was found in 2012, but it wasn't the same one.
So what did they find that to be? I mean, because
well, for sure it means there's aliens, right?
Oh, there has to be.
Yeah, well, good. There are people who think so, and some of them are very serious people, but I'm not one of them. I don't think it is aliens for various reasons, but nobody knows what it is. I mean, if you know what it is, you should, get off the air here and write it up, send in your analysis to some refereed journal somewhere, and you could be the winner of the next Nobel Prize, and that allows you to have a decent dinner in Sweden. So give it a thought.
Hey, Doc, what else does SETI? I think most people think that SETI just looks at catching the radio waves from distant stars. But you guys do way much more than that. You're looking at laser signals, exoplanets, and it seems like you're mostly doing astrobiology. Isn't that true?
That is true, actually. That's been a shift in the work of the SETI Institute over the past maybe 30 years or so. I mean, if you walk down the halls here at the Institute, just, on the other side of the wall behind me, and, you'll find there are like 70 or so scientists who work here, and 95% of them are doing what's called astrobiology, as you just noted. And that means they're interested in life in space, but they're willing to look for life that might not be terribly intelligent, but could be very commonplace, like, microbes under the surface of Mars, or, maybe microbes on some of the moons of Jupiter or Saturn. There are all sorts of places you could look for life nearby in our solar system. If you're interested in the kind of aliens you see in the local multiplex, the kind of aliens that seem intent on leveling Los Angeles, those aliens are going to be farther away, and so you have to use a different technique. But that's these days a very small part of the research effort at the SETI Institute.
I bet most people don't know that. You're saying 5% of the research is the radio waves, and 95% is this astrobiology study.
Yeah, that's largely a funding issue, to be honest.
Really?
I mean, it's not that we want it that way, but SETI is privately funded. Whereas astrobiology, you can get government grants, you can get NASA money and so forth to do that. But looking for intelligent life is not something that NASA does. I think it would be a hopeless task in my neighborhood, actually. But looking for intelligent life is something that in this country is privately funded, totally privately funded. People who throw, a contribution over the transom of the office here.
Well, I know recently we sent another expedition to Mars. What do you look for when it's somebody else's research? Do you guys communicate with all other organizations that are involved in these expeditions?
Well, yeah, in general you do, because to begin with, we have people that are probably involved. If it's a big effort, like for example, the New Horizons mission to Pluto, right? That's a dozen-year-long effort involving hundreds of millions of dollars, lots of people, and we have people here who worked on the New Horizons mission. Go see Pluto, then go to Ultima Thule and whatever. So very often the people here are connected with those projects in a very direct way. But even if not, science is a very open endeavor. Even in the times of the Soviet Union, the Cold War, everything that we were doing, they knew what we were doing. We knew what they were doing. It was all very open. That's the nature of science. Yeah.
So they welcome you. They don't try to keep you out of it or anything.
No.
That's good.
And that makes sense, particularly in the case of SETI. If we were to pick up a signal tonight, I hope it doesn't happen during dinner, but if we were to pick up a signal tonight, you would want people at every observatory in the world to try and verify that signal and learn whatever they could learn with whatever instruments they have. So keeping it a secret would be exactly the wrong strategy.
I wanted to talk. You mentioned the Hollywood alien. I think that you believe that if aliens came here, they would most likely be robotic or AI from an advancing thing. Like on Earth, we're headed in that direction now. If we sent something out, I'm sure that's what we would send.
Well, it's what we do send in most cases.
Yeah.
We haven't sent any people to Mars, or if we have, they haven't bothered to send us a postcard that they're enjoying it, right? So the big advantage of sending robots to planets is that, they don't insist on a round trip ticket. There's that. And it's also a lot cheaper because you don't need to pack food and air and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So that's robotic exploration. And the advantages are obvious. But this is something slightly different, because if you think of what's really important in this century, what we're doing that's really important, what will the 21st century be remembered for? It might be, self-driving cars or reality television or something like that. Could be, but more likely it's going to be the invention of synthetic intelligence, machines that can do more than just play a good game of chess, machines that can actually do anything cognitively that a human can do. And we're probably doing that. So if we're doing it, you can assume that, the advanced aliens long ago did it themselves, so that if you were to go to their planet, instead of seeing a whole bunch of little gray guys with big eyeballs, you might just see a lot of machinery.
Well, one thing I noticed over the last probably 10 years, especially when Ancient Aliens finally hit the air and really got a lot of answers for people, a lot of people were so excited. Like we'd sit around the TV and used to watch, the launches and any discoveries. That was the topic of discussion around the water coolers. Now we don't see or hear as much of the launches and even like the radio waves. That kind of was just 2 minutes of the news and gone until we bring it up on people like our shows. Do you think that that we can even be, I know this may sound weird, but can we even be surprised anymore? Because there's so many, unless an alien comes to this planet and lands in the middle of Times Square, do you think that there's any surprises coming soon that might actually get people back interested, besides, like I said, the Ancient Alien TV series?
Well, I don't know. I haven't become totally cynical yet, I have to say, because at least when it comes to discoveries, and after all, that's what SETI is. It's exploration. So
right.
You hope to discover something. Nature still has plenty of mysteries, right? I mean, we talked about the fast radio bursts. We don't know what they are. Whatever they are, they're incredibly energetic. They produce an enormous amount of energy. And, for what purpose? Well, we don't know. Probably no purpose. But what is it? Are they colliding black holes, colliding neutron stars? Is something else, aliens? We don't know. So that's a big mystery. And from the point of view of scientists, research scientists, they do their jobs not because of the pay, because the pay is usually fairly minimal, but because they want to know something. They just want to know. They're just curious to know, well, what's out there. It's like Captain Cook going out into the South Pacific in the 1750s. He would He wasn't going out there to make any money. He was just going out there because the British Admiralty wanted to know where all the islands were.
Right.
And he was interested enough to do that. So that's what it is. It's exploration. Why walk to the South Pole in 1910?
Right.
I mean,
Right. How would we know that we have an alien transmission? Is it just the fact that, I mean, we're never going to be able to understand it, I wouldn't think. So is it just that there is a transmission coming?
well, largely, yeah, but that isn't enough to prove that it's alien. I mean, we pick up signals all the time, right? I used to sit and watch the display screens on the computers when we were using the Arecibo telescope down in Puerto Rico. And, that's a very big antenna. It's 1,000 feet across, very sensitive. So you pick up signals. It was every 10 seconds on average we were getting a signal. And, of course, you have to sort through all those things. You don't do it by hand. You don't do it with humans. You do it with, the computers. They're much better at it. But decide, okay, is this signal really ET or is it AT&T? It's just some telecommunications satellite, and you're just picking up that signal. And you have to think of ways you could discriminate between man-made, or human-made, and alien-made. And that has gotten pretty good. I think that the algorithms that we have now are pretty good, but they could be better. And I think that's where artificial intelligence is actually going to prove its mettle when it comes to SETI. That we'll have the AI listening to the radios rather than the computers we have today.
Since you say we don't know what they are, but can we determine where they come from?
Yeah, you can if they repeat. That's the problem. See, because they found something like 60 some, I don't even know the exact number, but in the order of 60 fast radio bursts, which are these just very brief radio signals coming from the sky, very brief, just, a tenth of a second or something like that. And but if you only see them once, it's very hard to figure out what they are or where they are, because you can't look at them again with a different instrument that might, allow you to sort of zero in on it. Okay. Instead of looking at it with your eyeballs, get a pair of binoculars or a telescope or something. So it's very important to find some fast radio bursts that repeat. And there was one found in 2012. And because it repeated, other instruments could be brought to bear. And they figured out where it was coming from, that spot on the sky. And they looked very carefully at that spot on the sky with other telescopes and said, well, the only thing that's there is this little tiny dwarf galaxy. It's not even a very interesting galaxy, but the thing was coming from that galaxy, and that galaxy was 3 billion, with a B, 3 billion light years away. That's a long way.
That's a long way. Yeah. Is there more galaxies that are more active than others?
Well, yeah. Some galaxies are, chronically cranky, and they have big black holes in their centers. They're swallowing stuff, and they make a lot of, radio noise or even optical light. I mean, black holes the big black holes are on the centers of galaxies. But that one was 3 billion light years away, and the one that was just found by the Chime telescope, it's 1.5 billion light years away. For people who don't know what a light year is, it's about 6 trillion miles. So this was billions of trillions of miles away.
So getting there is like driving in L.A., the traffic here.
Yeah, although some people in L.A. actually do reach their destination. It was in the news.
I don't think people realize this vastness of space you're talking about. What percentage of the observable universe do you think SETI's looked at so far?
Well, we know that. I mean, the number of star systems we've looked at is a few thousand. That's not
a few thousand out of 200 billion.
Yeah, in our galaxy, there are maybe 200 billion star systems. That's right. That's exactly right. And when people say, well, how come you guys haven't found anything? I think that's the answer right there. I mean, you got to know the territory. You got to explore more. But fortunately, the experiment's getting faster. We can explore faster and faster because of improvements in computer technology. So that's why I maintain that we have a good chance of finding something in the next 2 decades, simply because the computers get faster, the search gets faster, and then you might find something sooner.
And you have more and more telescopes. Now you've got the Allen's got the 42. You have 42 telescopes. Is that expanding?
It's not, though it could be. But that's a money issue. Issue. The real problem, I think, with SETI, and I know this sounds self-serving, but it's simply a fact. The real problem with SETI is not so much the science or the technology. We kind of know what we want to do, how we could do the exploration. It's like Captain Cook saying, okay, I know how I can map those islands in the South Pacific, but you got to put up the money for me to pay these syphilitic sailors and keep them from getting scurvy while we go look, right? That's the problem.
Everything's time and money.
Yeah.
So what is the closest star system to us, to give people an idea?
Proxima Centauri, it's about a little over 4 light years away. That's the closest. If you don't count the sun, of course.
And I know a lot of people, and I know even me. And you said he's been around for a while. So you're saying that, with technology now, you've not seen any UFOs, you've not seen any aliens, and even around our planet. So, do you personally think there are UFOs or aliens?
But in other words, do I think that we're being visited, or do
Yes.
I think that somebody?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I don't actually. I don't. I hate to say this because 1/3 of the public thinks that we are being visited, that the aliens are actually, buzzing Chatsworth or something, and occasionally hauling people out of their bedrooms for those unpleasant experiments. Yeah, that would be really interesting. I mean, that would be job security for me in a way. I mean, we'd stop trying to pick up radio signals and eavesdrop on ET. Well, if they're here, I mean, let's just find them here. That's going to be a heck of a lot easier and probably a lot more interesting. But yeah, the evidence for that seems to me to be very, very weak.
Well, this is what I wanted to get to with you is that, okay, so you think that there's life out there, obviously, but you just don't think it's been here. What do you think about all of us ancient alien theorists that, believe that there's been extraterrestrial intervention because there's like these huge stone structures on the top of a mountain, and there's a mythology that goes with that says someone came down from the heavens and did this. Do you just dismiss that, or what is your take on that?
Listen, dismiss, has various levels, but my take on that is, well, okay, just because they said that something came down from the sky. I mean, if you ask the Greeks, what about lightning? They would have said, well, that's Zeus throwing thunderbolts. Okay, well, just because the Greeks, who after all were not stupid, just because the Greeks said that doesn't mean that that's really the best explanation for lightning, right? Okay, so the fact that there was some myth associated, that proves nothing in science. There are myths associated with everything, right? There are myths about all the constellations. Orion, he's on the hunt for something. No, it's just, just a bunch of stars that, from our point of view, seem to make a nice picture in the sky. So that's not good enough. Now, if you say, oh, well, there are all these really strange structures on the tops of mountains, no humans could build that. Well, I think that that's belied by anybody who's studied archaeology. I mean, I don't know if you guys have been to the pyramids. I've been to the pyramids a couple times, the ones in Egypt. And, it's obviously a lot of work to build a pyramid. But on the other hand, it was a government project, right? This is a tomb for the pharaoh. So they had the money. Labor was cheap. And it turns out you can talk to civil engineers about this. If you have 20,000 people working on a project for 10 years, you can stack up limestone blocks on top of one another until you get a point, right? That it's actually not all that hard. So, and if you go there, you'll see all these earthen ramps leading up to, half-finished constructions where they clearly ran out of money. I mean, it's very obvious that these were all built by humans. And yet, from our vantage point, we think, oh, well, those Egyptians. Now,
hold on. I got to stop you right there. It's right. Very obvious these were all built by humans. What about like Baalbek, Lebanon or something where we have these 1,200-ton blocks that are carved out of the side? I mean, how was that done thousands of years ago? To me, some of those things are the strongest evidence that possibly something else was here.
No, I think to begin with, I doubt that they're 1,200 tons. 12 tons, maybe.
No, they claim 1,200. Well, maybe I'm saying it wrong. I think it's 1,200 tons. It's ridiculous. The Baalbek, Lebanon things, they line up thousands of people on one block.
Yeah, you could do that. Remember, labor.
And you think humans did that, huh?
The labor was cheap, and these people were very.
The labor was cheap.
You could go to Stonehenge. Those blocks are, they're several tons. Certainly not 1,200 tons, but they're several tons. That's for sure. You'd put one on a railroad flat car, and that'd probably be enough for the flat car. But people have worked out how you could get those, halfway across England with nothing but rollers. Forget the wheel, just rollers and ropes and a bunch of guys who have no choice but to help you do this.
It's so nice the way he skirts around saying those words.
Saying what? Which words?
Slavery.
Slavery. I don't know that it was slavery. I mean, the people who built the pyramids were actually, in general, not slaves.
Right. That's true.
They were being paid.
Yeah.
And you needed a lot of people who were rather talented, because the blocks are fairly well shaped, and because they didn't use any, mortar, they had to be fairly well shaped. So you need people who are good with, a hammer and a chisel, basically. But if you went inside the pyramids and you found a Klingon cell phone, I would change my my tomb here. I would say, well, now that's not something the Egyptians could have built. But when you go there and you find something that they could very well have built, when you go 20 miles south of the pyramids to the Saqqara pyramid, which was the first one of these that was built, and they used the wrong angle on it. It was too steep, and it's falling apart, and they realized that it wasn't going to work. So they learned something. I think that the aliens would know about all that. The Egyptians figured it out.
Interesting. So you don't think anything's ever been here, even like an alien probe, for example, like a AI thing, just testing our environment or anything? You don't think anything's ever come to Earth?
How do you know? Unless you have evidence for it.
Yeah.
You can, well, they've been circling the Earth at the distance of Jupiter for 4 billion years, watching what's going on this planet. I mean, it's easy to suggest that, and you can't prove it's not true. So but then it becomes a story. All you can do is say, all right, what evidence do we have that something actually has happened? And I don't think that something like the pyramids or Baalbek or these sorts of things are very good evidence, because they all could have been made by humans, not to mention the fact that they were all made yesterday. It's kind of curious. You've had humans for 300,000 years, and they only got interested enough to stack up stones just at the same time that we got interested in stacking up stones.
Yeah, you look at time differently than most people, because like I've heard you say how it's like, well, it's another billion years, but it's basically the same date, because in the terms you're talking about, that's meaningless, because you're looking at such vast distances and such vast amounts of time.
That's true. I mean, when you talk about, if you can talk about ancient aliens, but they're not ancient aliens; they're more or less contemporary aliens.
Right. Right. Isn't that funny to think of that?
Right.
Right, 12,000 years ago, we think of as ancient aliens,
which is,
and to Dr. Seth,
that's nothing.
It's nothing. It's nothing.
So there's nothing ever on this planet that even perked your interest that says possibly.
Well, not of the things I've heard. That isn't to say that they weren't here. I mean, people say, could we ever have been visited? Well, I mean, who's to say? Maybe some aliens visited Earth 100 million years ago. Right? They bottled up a couple of small dinosaurs to take away as samples, made a few photos, and left. How would you ever know?
Right.
You would know. But I think it is worth pointing out that in terms of them visiting Earth because of us, right? Some people say, oh, they're here because they don't like what we're doing to the environment, or they don't like the fact we have nuclear weapons, or they don't like the fact that we have reality television, or there's something they don't like. That would mean they would need to know about that in order to come here. And to know about it, the only way they could know about it is maybe picking up our television, our radar, FM radio, that sort of thing. And those signals have only been, boiling off the Earth for the last 70 years. So they can't be very far away if this is what's prompted them to come here, in fact. In fact, the total number of star systems that have had enough time to pick up, say, our television, decide, oh, we better go visit those guys, help them build some buildings in the desert. I mean, they can't be more than 35 light years away for them to have had enough time to pick up those signals, make the decision to come here, and get in their rockets and come here at no faster than the speed of light.
And that's only a couple thousand star systems at the most, right?
Right. So It seems a little unlikely. But you couldn't rule out that they visited the trilobites. Maybe they got books about trilobites.
Okay, we have a viewer question. Would like to know what are your thoughts on Nibiru, the 10th planet or whatever?
Yeah, Nibiru. Yes, this is a hypothesized 10th planet that occasionally comes to the inner solar system and wreaks its revenge on Earth by causing earthquakes and tidal waves and general mayhem.
And the Anunnaki supposedly came from there and everything. Yeah.
Once again, see, these ancient societies were so good at all this. I mean, they couldn't predict eclipses really, but they could do all this. Well, if there is such a planet, and of course there are planets out there we haven't found, or at least bodies, whether you call them planets or not is a semantic issue. In the outer solar system, for sure. I mean, we just saw one a couple of weeks ago, Ultima Thule. Looks like a big peanut, right? But it isn't all that big. It's like, it would fit in Los Angeles, right? You could fit it down there. But, we didn't even know it was there, and there are many more like that. But Nibiru is said to be about the size of the Earth. So that's pretty big. There's nothing we found in the outer solar systems that's as big as that, or even close to that big. It doesn't, they're
So you think we would have found it definitively by now?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And particularly if every 5,000 years it came to the inner solar system, right? Maybe I should back off on that. Maybe not definitively, but we would have found it for sure if it routinely came to the inner solar system and caused all this havoc and destruction. Because if it's been doing that for the last, since the solar system was born, say 4.5 billion years ago, it would have disrupted the orbits of the inner solar system. You would notice there's something funny about the orbits of the inner solar system, because it's this intruder that keeps coming by and stirs things up, and you don't see that. So, and particularly people who say, well, Nibiru's on its way, so get ready, buy some frozen pizza and prepare for the apocalypse. You would see it. By the time it got to Jupiter, you'd have good pictures of it.
Now, you brought up that thing they saw recently, and I think there's a doctor from Harvard, I can't think of the name, but he thought that the behavior of this body spoke to it could be an alien craft. I believe he said that.
He did. Avi Loeb is his name.
Yes.
And he's the director of the Harvard astronomy department. I mean, Avi is a very clever guy, and he has said that Omou Ahmuo, which is the name of this object, because it was found in Hawaii, using a telescope in Hawaii, that it could very well be a probe. Now, his arguments are pretty sophisticated. One of them is this: look, it came right into our solar system, right? Now, you think about it. It's coming from somebody else's solar system. We know that because of its orbit, right? It's not from our solar system, it's from somebody else's. But, if you just randomly throw a rock out into space from somebody else's solar system, what are the chances it's ever going to hit, for example, our solar system? And that's like you guys stepping outside, throwing a dart into the air, and having it fall and hit a nickel that's 2 blocks away, right? I mean, it could happen, but it's not going to happen unless you throw lots and lots of darts, or there are lots and lots of nickels, but, the number of nickels is determined by how many solar systems are out there.
If I had a nickel for every... Oh, never mind.
Yeah. So, but I mean, his point is, isn't that amazing that it happened to come and actually hit our solar system? And the only possible explanation for that is either they're just lots and lots of rocks. Omou Ahmuo is just one of a gazillion number of rocks, and so some of them are going to hit the solar system just by chance. So that's like throwing a gazillion number of darts into the air. Or somebody targeted us. Okay, that's a persuasive argument. That sounds interesting, but I'm more inclined to think that maybe there are a lot of rocks. He points one other thing out, too. He says this object of Omou Ahmuo, when it swung around the sun, it sped up a little bit of acceleration that was unexpected. And so, that sounds like maybe there's a motor on there. Well, it would also have sped up if it's an old comet, because when it went around the sun, a little of the ice on the surface would have boiled off, and, boiling ice makes a little bit of steam, and it's just like a rocket, and that accelerates the rock. So either it's a very old comet, or it's a rendezvous with Rama time, and it's actually a Klingon spacecraft.
Specifically a Klingon spacecraft.
Right. Which wouldn't be that
He's
bad.
narrowed it down.
You can choose that interpretation.
For our Star Trek fans. We had a gentleman on several years ago through the Smithsonian. He was, I believe, with NASA. And we were talking about how many planets there were, and how many planets that are Earth-like. And he said, every year we discover more and more planets that are Earth-like. Through SETI, what is your take on planets that could sustain life like ours or similar to ours? And do you think our technology is up to that point yet to discover planets like that?
Well, because we have discovered. I mean, we don't really know if they're like Earth, because to say that they're like Earth, what does that mean? I mean, does it, does it mean that they have oceans that cover 2/3 of the planet and they have a thick atmosphere? Or
I thought liquid water was one of the.
Yeah, liquid water. Water is very common. There's water everywhere. I mean, because hydrogen is the most common thing in the universe, and oxygen is, I think, the 5th most common element in the universe. So there's a lot of H2O around, but planets that are more or less the same size as Earth and more or less the same temperature, average temperature as Earth, so the water doesn't always freeze or always boil away, are fairly common. Maybe 1 in 5 star systems, these are data from the Kepler mission, 1 in 5 star systems seems to have a planet that's, kind of comparable to Earth. You can't say that it's Earth's twin because we don't have a close-up photo or anything, but it sounds like there are plenty of Earths out there, right? If it's 1 in 5 star systems, that means what? 50 billion cousins of Earth in our galaxy, just in our galaxy.
Wow.
It's astronomical. Pardon the pun, but it is. This field changes 180 degrees as we advance. Like a couple of quick examples are, in 1929, it was thought that our galaxy, as we've talked about on the show before, Tony, was the entire universe. Now we think our galaxy is one of 200 billion galaxies. And then in 1984, when SETI officially became SETI, it was believed that there were no exoplanets, like you're talking about now. And then in 88, they found one. Now we're up to 4,000 almost. And we think that almost every single star has a planet around it. So how can we be certain that we're using the best possible technique to search for ET? Doesn't radio signals seem like an old, simple technology? Why wouldn't we think this advanced aliens would be using something else to communicate?
Well, if you can suggest what the something else is, I'm sure it'll be considered. Look, to say that radio is old school, this coming from podcasters after all, but I mean, because they don't want radio, maybe, I don't know. But you could say radio is old school, but we're not using less radio than we did in the time of Marconi. We're using a heck of a lot more, right? And, television didn't wipe out radio. It just meant that radio went to different purposes. It's like the wheel. It's really old, but, we continue to use it. And I think we will continue to use it. So I don't think that radio, you can't say that's the wrong way to look for ET because it's old and they'll have moved on to something else. Like, I don't know what they'd move on to. And that's the problem. If you say, okay.
Voice over internet.
Yeah, the internet is radio, of course. I know that. Right. So, yeah, it's just another way of using radio. I mean, if you talk about the internet, your Wi-Fi, that's a radio.
Yeah.
Okay. So to say that radio is old technology, yeah, it's old technology. There are a lot of old technologies, but they're still very useful. Your electricity is still generated by a steam engine in the end. But, maybe there are, in Star Trek, what do they use? Subspace communication. That's what they use, subspace communication. Now, you can say, you guys should be using subspace communication because that's what the aliens will be broadcasting. But if I go to the Stanford bookstore and try and find a textbook on subspace communication, I can't find one. So how am I supposed to build the equipment?
Right. That's interesting.
I mean, it's just, it's science fiction, but you can't do an experiment based on the science fiction. You have to know something.
Do people send you stuff all the time saying they saw something? Because I think when you say searching for extraterrestrial intelligence, I mean, they're probably thinking, oh, there's aliens. I know there's other organizations that do ask for, like
MUFON or something.
MUFON. Do you constantly get those questions?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Yes.
I know what you say to all of them, right? No way.
Just about every day, yeah, I get an email or a phone call or something. Yes.
Every day.
There are a lot of people who've seen a lot of things.
Interesting.
Yeah, I even as a kid, my mom, just as my UFO sighting as a kid, I don't remember, but my mom, my brothers and sisters do remember of seeing a craft, and they were all scared, and they said I wanted to go with them. But have you ever saw something that you couldn't explain?
Yeah, I have. Let's see, twice that I can think of. The first time was on what they call the 405.
Yeah, I thought a political joke was coming. Yeah.
No. The 405. It was better known as the San Diego Freeway. Anyhow, I was just driving down there and I saw something that, oh my God, what the heck is that, right? And it seemed to be coming right at me. So I thought, this is it. Maybe I ought to get my will in order. But actually, it was coming in the direction of all the people on the freeway too. It turned out to be the Goodyear blimp. All right, so that it was a blimp. All right. Now, more recently, I was giving a talk in a place called Sierra Vista, Arizona. And I was walking from my motel to get some lunch, and I saw something in the sky that wasn't moving. It wasn't moving. And yet there it was in the sky, just hanging there. And it was very odd looking. I didn't know what it was. Well, it turns out that Sierra Vista is very close to the Mexico-America border. And this is what's called an aerostat. It's just a balloon that's on a rope, on a wire that ties it to the ground. And it's just up there with a bunch of cameras, video cameras, just surveying the border, looking for people that are coming across the border. And they're all along the border, apparently. But I didn't know that. So, for a while I thought, do you think the aliens have come all the way to Sierra Vista because there's good Tex-Mex cuisine here?
Which is possible.
Yes.
So is that what you attribute all UFO sightings to, like military craft and just people seeing things?
Well, if you make a list of those sightings that have been explained, right, where somebody took the trouble to try and explain them, when they do that, by the way, they typically can explain 90 to 95% of them. Project Blue Book, which is that's a show on television now. The actual Project Blue Book looked at about 10,000 sighting reports, and they were able to explain 95% of them. So 5% they couldn't explain. Now you could say, well, those 5%, those are aliens, but maybe. But then again, as
Tony said, for sure.
yeah. But the LA Police Department solves about 60% of the homicides, and
right.
At least 40% that could have been done by aliens that are, living in Pacoima or
Encino.
Encino. Yeah, Encino.
Yeah, Encino. Yeah, but probably not. They probably were also committed by humans. But anyhow, so you have the same situation with these things. So there's an incredible laundry list of things that have been found to account for some of these sightings, but it may not be exhaustive. And the real problem is this, that witness testimony is a very poor way to learn the truth. Anybody who works for the police department knows that's true, that, witnesses are very unreliable. And Neil deGrasse Tyson, famous astronomer, says all the time, witness testimony is the worst kind of evidence for science. And in particular, witness testimony from pilots or military people, because they're trained to see things, just not aliens.
So we have another question from one of our viewers, and they want to know, is Jupiter a sun in process?
When they say in process?
Is it the next sun? Is it going to turn into a sun at some point?
Well, if it does, that's going to violate all the astrophysics I ever learned in grad school. I can tell you that. It's not big enough. You need something with about 18 or 20 times the mass of Jupiter for its own gravity to squish its innards to a very high temperature, right, where it'll begin nuclear reaction. So Jupiter will not turn into a sun, although it does occasionally in the movies, but it's not actually. This is one thing you don't need to worry about.
Are you worried about that, Tony?
I didn't till just
okay. Okay, Doc, here's a big question for you. So what do you honestly think would happen if you guys at SETI conclusively heard something that you definitively thought was a signal from another intelligence? Do you think the government would step in at all, or do you think most people would even believe you?
No, I don't think either of those is actually accurate, because we've had false alarms, so we sort of know what happens. No, I would like to think the government might step in, because that would show that somebody in the government cares. Maybe they'll fund us. But we've had false alarms in the past where the newspapers do call up because it's looks like it's pretty convincing, but the government was never interested. And in fact, as I say, it would be nice if the government were a little bit interested. But no, there's nobody in the government that seems to be terribly interested. But the media start calling right away. That was our experience the last time we had a signal that looked pretty promising. The New York Times was calling, but not the government.
So you think all this talk of any government cover-up of all these things is just complete nonsense?
Yeah, I think so. Look, I've worked for the federal government. I had, what did I have, top secret clearance or something, some sort of secret clearance. And where I was working, you had to go through 3 locked doors to get to this place. So it was secret stuff. It was actually for for military aircraft, actually, is what it was for. But the idea that the federal government could keep something secret, like the presence of aliens or something like that, I was never convinced they could do that. They weren't very good at keeping secrets, in my opinion, at all. But
well, if you had a secret clearance, you couldn't tell us anyway. So you probably know that there are, but you're not allowed to tell us.
That's the beauty of the conspiracy idea, that you no matter what you say, you're going to be accused of you're just covering up more. But even if you think that, even if you think that government is capable of keeping this kind of thing secret for how long has it been since Roswell? Like 70 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, if you think that they're able to keep that secret, you have to also assume that every other government is keeping it secret too, or the aliens, for some reason, only visit the United States.
Right. Look what leaks out of the White House today.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Just it happened last week, and it leaks the next week. So that's a good.
But 70 years. That's
yeah.
Well, how do you explain? And I know people are going to say this because people do say this. How do you explain human beings going from stagecoach and horseback to flying to the moon by 1969, and now we're, traveling to different planets. How can you explain within 100 years the technology grew so fast?
Well, I think it was aliens. They came to Earth.
There you go. We got it right here. We finally got him to admit it.
Come on. At any stage, you can look at what's motivating the next step in science or technology. And there are no miracles in there. There are no miracles. It is not that suddenly we were able to do something we couldn't have done before, something that we couldn't have done a month earlier. That isn't what happens. It's this slow progress, particularly when it comes to technology, right? Oh, the aliens came down and they taught us how to build steam engines so we could construct the railroads and steamships. Do you think that's the case? Okay, maybe not steamships. That isn't sophisticated enough for the aliens. It's when we went to airplanes. Well, what were those guys in Dayton, Ohio doing? Right? I mean, they didn't need to do that. Aliens must have taught the Wright brothers how to build a plane that could fly 300 feet. That's the best the aliens can do.
Well, I'm glad we finally got you to admit it, so that's good. No, just kidding.
So what's next at SETI? I know you guys have this new techno search where we can now go online and look at all the archives from 1960 till now. How's that? Was that the next?
Yeah, well, that isn't part of the search. That's simply a way to know what has been done in SETI. I mean, the data are generally not archived because there's so much data you can't afford to archive it, particularly for the earlier experiments. I mean, when we take data, when we do observing with our Allen telescope array, I mean, it's collecting, for every channel, we're collecting a byte of data essentially every second, something like that. So that's, I'm going to polarize, it's like 140 million bytes, make it 100 million to make it easy, 100 million bytes per second. Right. So who can afford the disk space to store all that stuff? Right. I mean, we can't. So, the data are searched real time, and then anything interesting is obviously kept. But all the rest of it is just thrown onto the floor. That's it. So, but this database does allow you to say, well, did anybody ever look in the direction of Zeta Reticuli, just to name a random star system which probably doesn't have any life whatsoever? Has anybody looked in that part of the sky? And by using the database, you might be able to say, yes, there was an experiment back in 1980, whatever, and they looked at that part of the sky.
And can't amateur people just go on there and post their stuff too if they've looked somewhere?
Well, I don't know. I don't know.
There's supposed to be something like that on there. I was reading that now it's going to open up where other people can say we've looked at this. I don't know.
Yeah, the difference is, the stuff that's up there has, gone through refereed journals in general, right? And so that means, somebody's looked at this and judged whether the experiment had the kind of sensitivity.
Well, maybe not amateur, but other non-SETI people, I guess, would be.
Oh, well, other non-SETI people, that's perfectly okay. I mean, listen, I wasn't working for SETI when I did my first SETI experiments. I was just a radio astronomer studying galaxies. But, sometimes there weren't any interesting galaxies in the sky where I was, able to point the telescope, and I would just look up some local star positions and, just point the antennas in those directions. I never wrote that stuff up, but, had I found something, I would have written it up.
So what do you think? When are we going to hear something from the sky? I mean, I think every 10 years somebody says that, well, within 10 years, we're going to find out about extraterrestrials. You even had some bet with coffee for some huge audience about within 20 years or something, we think we're going to hear something. Where do you stand now? What do you think?
I stand by that bet. I hope you like coffee. Yes. I bet everybody a cup of Starbucks will find ET by 2035 or something
2035. There we go.
Yeah. Well, and you could say, oh, yeah, it's 2035 today, but 10 years from now, it'll be 2045. I wouldn't put it past me. But, no, I mean, the reason I named that kind of number, the reason I say within, a decade or two, we'll have a good chance, is simply because the equipment is getting better all the time. And the number of channels, the amount of the radio dial we can examine keeps going up. And it goes up, following what's called Moore's Law. It kind of doubles every 2 years. So what all of this is saying is that by 2035, we will have looked at about 1 million star systems.
Wow.
I don't know if that's enough to find a signal.
Because that's fractional compared to 200 billion.
Right.
Yeah, it's a small fraction. But what we've done up till now is a few thousand. So this is, several orders of magnitude improvement in the sample space. And I was willing to gamble a cup of coffee. Listen, I didn't gamble them a new car. I didn't bet on that.
Just a
cup of coffee.
All right, before we get out of here, because I know your day's busy, tell them about your show that you do.
Yeah, Big Picture Science. Big Picture Science. It's science every week for an hour, and you can find it online. And you know, if you live in the right cities, you can hear it as well. But you can hear it online, and then you don't have to wait for it to be broadcast. So.
I got one more viewer question for you, if we could sneak this in. What will be the nationality of the first person to safely set foot on the planet Mars? And which country or company do you think will achieve that first?
I think the nationality, I don't know. I'll continue to bet on America.
Cup of coffee?
We could make America Martian again. Yeah, no, I think so. But it could be Chinese. You know, the Chinese are putting a lot of effort into manned space flight. And that might be the best thing for the U.S. space program. If the Chinese put a human on Mars before we do, it'll be like 1957 Sputnik all over again, and I'm sure that we'll see some more money.
That'll spur us. Yeah,
Good.
right.
We need a little competition there. So
yeah, maybe that's it.
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. We appreciate what you do and your healthy skepticism. This is what Captain Ron's for too.
He's more skeptical than I am. So imagine that. Yeah, that's fantastic. We really enjoyed this. I'm sure our audience did as well. Really appreciate you coming on, Doctor.
All right, make sure you go to his website and just his name.com, and please go to SETI and like you said, check out his show. One more time, it's Big
Picture Science.
Pretty easy. Big Picture Science. And go to our website, truthbetoldworldwide.com, and we want to appreciate you guys for always tuning in, and we will see you next time right here on UBN and Truth Be Told. Bye-bye.